Hey everyone, welcome back to some new Pro Revenge stories. I hope you had a great day. If you would like to help me grow this channel, please press the like button. It really helps in the algorithm. And if you haven't already, why don't you make this the video that you subscribe to the channel? And with that out of the way, let's start with the first story. The first story is called He Didn't Know the Real Rules. I and my 3 roommates moved into a housing community that is basically just a bunch of cookie-cutter townhomes. All of these homes have garages that open onto streets that wind through the community, with your front door opening to a path on the other side of your house. There are also some free parking spots on the edge of the community where there are no houses. When we first moved in, we quickly found out that parking could be a bit of a pain during the day, especially when people had guests during the weekend. Now my roommates and I admittedly have more cars than the average family. Because we usually have to commute for work, we each have one. We try to make parking easier by using the garage. But we all have tons of sporting equipment, so we can usually only get one car in the garage. When all the parking in all the free spots is full, we just park our cars right up against the garage and leave them there during the day or overnight. We had seen other neighbors do it, and it still left ample room for people driving on the street to get by. Well, one day our neighbor comes up while my roommates and I are in the garage organizing some stuff. He tells us that we can't park there overnight as it is against community rules. Before we had a chance to respond, he added, "And if you do it again, I will personally make sure you are towed." His first comment was pretty reasonable. We had just moved in and didn't know that rule. But his second comment really just made him seem like a giant jerk and wasn't necessary. One of my roommates simply responded that we didn't know, as we just moved in and we wouldn't park there overnight anymore. Well, the neighbor was clearly trying to assert his dominance. He responded with, "Good, you better not, because I'll be watching." From then on, we did follow those rules. If we parked in front of our garage during the day, we would make sure to move before we went to sleep. This worked out for a while, until one fateful day. One of my roommates stopped by quickly after work to grab some dinner and clothes before heading to his girlfriend. This was around 7 PM, so he just parked up against the garage as it would be quicker than the parking spaces. Plus, it was early enough that he didn't think he'd get towed. Around 8 PM he went to head out, and his car was gone. Guess who was there though? The neighbor, standing right outside. Immediately he said to my roommate, "I told you you were going to get towed if you parked here again." The neighbor and my roommate argued for a bit before my roommate came back inside and caused the car lot. Well, it ends up that they are closed, so he will have to get his car in the morning. The kicker was that they were going to charge him an overnight fee. All in all, it comes out to $500, which isn't a small amount of money for us. This neighbor has been a jerk to us since we moved in, and even though it wasn't my car that was towed, I took this personally. To make sure we didn't get towed again, we decided to read the community rules. And lo and behold, we found out that the street in front of the garage is actually considered a fire lane, and no one is supposed to park there at any point during the day. Between the neighbor treating us like crap and the fact that we could hear him yelling at his wife every night, I start to plan my revenge. Since 2020 started, I've been able to work from home, and my desk conveniently looks out onto the street between the houses. This means that I can clearly see the neighbor's garage. I start to take notice of when he parks his car out in front of his garage. For about 2 weeks, I noticed that he would come home around 1 PM and leave again at 2 PM. During the 3rd week, I decided I would begin the revenge. On Monday, true to his schedule, he stopped by around 1 PM. After about 10 minutes, I gave the tow company a call and said that he was parked in the fire lane and if they could come and remove his car. 20 minutes later, a tow truck rolled up, hooked his car up and towed it off. About 15 minutes later, the neighbor came out and I could hear him start to yell back into his house, presumably at his wife. He then left and didn't come back until later that evening after he had gotten his car. Now, it was funny to do this, and I made sure to send snaps to my roommates who don't work from home, but I wasn't done yet. See, this jerk apparently didn't learn the first time, because literally the next day he parks in front of his garage again. What do I do? Well, the exact same thing as the day before, of course. Again, he comes out, realizes his car is gone, yells at his wife, and then goes to get it. Now, after this time, he is a bit smarter and parks in an actual spot before going in to get his lunch or whatever it is he does there midday. He does this for about 2 weeks before he decides that it's okay to park in front of his garage again. Well, who is still sitting at a desk every day and notices this immediately? Well, me of course. And being the concerned resident that I am, I immediately call the tow company and off his car goes again. And again, this is met with yelling. I wish that this had a more satisfying ending, but after this third time I decided I would stop. I genuinely felt bad for his wife, who he seemed to do most of the yelling at as if it was her fault that he was an idiot. What I can tell you is that it definitely cost him over $1,000. If he hadn't gotten my roommate's car towed, then we wouldn't have ever found that fun little rule. The best part was that a number of my neighbors would have their cars parked there at the same time. They'd never had their cars towed, which made it all the better when his was. And the last story for today is called Revenge on a Douchebag. As we found out that we would be expecting not 1 but 2 kids, we knew we had to move to a real house with more space. At the time, we were still living in a 1-bedroom studio, 1 up from the ground floor. Its only entrance was a metal fire escape. This is not ideal for a pregnant woman, let alone to live with 2 small babies. So we found a privately leased house that was newly renovated and had all the room and a large garden we were looking for. We signed the lease and immediately collected the keys. As the owner drove off, the woman next door comes up to me. She immediately demands that we do not make noises before noon, as her boyfriend works nights and sleeps in, and also a whole bunch of other do's and don'ts. So right off the bat, I knew trouble is coming. As the house was fully renovated and not much had to be done, we were like, don't poke the bear. We'll do the things that make noise after noon. We moved in after 2 weeks and the whole street was warm and welcoming. My wife was almost due to give birth and some offered help with anything we needed, really kind people. They also told us about our neighbors. Nobody liked them, he was a big bully and got into arguments with everybody. Also, they were known as radio pirates, which went alongside them partying Thursday to Sunday till 5 in the morning. So, loud music, constant yelling, always drunken, you name it. Really something to look forward to when moving in, certainly with 2 babies on the way. The partying began immediately, full blast. Real classy for someone demanding to be quiet when the douchebag needs his beauty sleep. Then one day, my father-in-law came to put new grass in. He has his trailer parked at the back of our houses, which is a public space. Not according to the neighbor though. No, that exact spot where the trailer, full with grass sorts, quite heavy stuff was parked, was his spot and we had to move the trailer. This was not going to happen, as I was not planning to walk all the way around the house with the sods. He gets angry right away and demands me to move it. I just told him to go screw himself. I was done with him already then and there. We went on working and the end of the day comes when my father-in-law wants to leave. He hooks up the trailer and bam, there was the douchebag, telling him off, yelling that it is his spot and he better does not do this again or else. Mess with me all you want, I can handle it, but what you don't do is threaten my family. I ran outside and told him in no uncertain terms to back off or he will be the sorry one. A total bluff on my side. Yes, I have the temper, but I'm not impressively built and have no hidden fighting skills, but I do fight dirty. He backs off, my father-in-law leaves and I go inside where I find my wife, crying. She got scared of him maybe doing something to her father and or me, and this is something we don't need right now. Combined with hormones from being pregnant, you can paint that picture. So I'm even more agitated, but had to promise not to act on anything. I won't, dear. Not yet anyway. Time went on without any real incident, and then came the time my wife goes into labor. It didn't go smooth and we had to stay 3 excruciating nights due to a lot of things. Finally we get to go home and our family had put a giant sign in our front yard welcoming the babies. The sign was already up for a few days prior to coming home, so our friendly neighbors definitely knew about it. But did they care? No, they did not. From the first night on, they started to party and broad-blasted their crappy music. They started at noon and continued to until 5 or 6 in the morning. Classy. They also kept going for days, so it wasn't just Thursday to Sunday, it was all week long and the next. So we were broken, hardly slept. And then I just had it. I researched some things on radio pirates, the laws and regulations, and on his large 5-meter plus antenna in his backyard, which was illegal in itself. But he used it to illegally broadcast on radio, which meant he had a lot of equipment to do so, which was even more illegal. You can even get you jailed, but at the very least they could seize it all and fine him big time, in the 10 to 45k area. Now I did not immediately turn him in, but instead were looking for another house to lease first. This was because I figured it wouldn't sit well with him and having a wife and 2 babies in the house alone during the day because I had to go to work. I hear you guys thinking, why not involve the police? Well, they are utterly useless in cases like this. We called once, and what they did disturbs me to this day. They rang their doorbell and immediately started off by saying we called them about noise complaints. No protection or anything whatsoever, just blatantly told them we were the reason they are there, told them to keep it down, and that was it. They didn't even follow up with us or anything. As you can guess, douchebag was now even angrier. He yelled over the fence that separates our backyards that I really should not do that again, a threat yet again of which I told the police. I did report it the first time as I chalked it up to alpha male and heat of the moment. But without witnesses to corroborate, nothing could be done yet again. Some days later, I walked out the front door and he just stepped out of his car. He came up to me, demanding I cut back some of our ivy that grew on our side of the fence because it tangled in with his antenna. He would be gone for some hours and I could come into his garden to cut back the ivy that grew through on their side. And then a light bulb went on above my head. I told him politely that I would do that immediately. That gave me the opportunity to find out the make and model of his antenna to ascertain its signal strength. Also, it gave me a good view of the equipment he had through the window, so I could snap some photos of it. This was the icing on the cake. We did manage to find a new home and already had signed the lease, so we would be gone in 2 weeks. Luckily, we only had to paint some walls for the girls' room and furthermore just pack our things and move them to the other house. So after I trimmed the ivy and collected my evidence, I went online that night to find out the proper channels to report a broadcast pirate. As it turned out, I had to call the telecom agency, but also the police. I wasn't too happy with the latter, but I remembered I have a nephew that works for the police. Officially, he works in another department, but knew enough colleagues that could help us. And we could trust them not to confront them again, saying I was the one that sent them. That was extremely important for our safety when doing what I was doing. So I gave both the agency and the police all evidence I collected and pointed them to the frequencies he pirated so they could listen in. Then they started a neighborhood investigation, which wasn't really necessary. But this was to cover us to make it look like he got caught by accident because they had an active investigation in our area. You never know what he can learn from legal documents and such. We asked them to wait with the raid. We moved 2 weeks later and they raided him 2 days after we moved. All of his equipment, computers, radios, cell phones and his car were seized. He left in cuffs, his girlfriend did too, for making a big scene and tried to interfere. All of which was live reported to me by one of my ex-neighbors who were equally ecstatic about this. It turned out this wasn't the first time he got caught, but his 3rd time. His car had no insurance on it and his MOT failed. This would normally have no big consequences because he didn't drive it while raided. But they had the guy surveilled for a week and that definitely meant he was seen driving it while not having insurance and valid MOT. He was fined somewhere around 30k euros, went to jail for 12 weeks and everything seized was destroyed except the car. His girlfriend had to do 40 some hours of community service. They had to sell the house, which made for very happy neighbors as they too were over and done with them. As I said, I do fight, but very dirty. You have to really make an effort for me to get to that point. They did, and suffered. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Bye bye.